Rightio. Radio sailing is designed to be self-policing. It's different to every other sport. The closest thing I believe, not that I am a golfer, is golf. All right, we don't have umpires there. We that say you penalty, unless we have international judges, and then they look after that. The basic principle of radio sailing is the competitors agree to be governed by a set of rules which is expected to be followed. The sport is built on the premise that if a boat breaks a rule, he'll immediately get clear of the fleet and do a penalty. Now, over time, this has eroded. Believe me, we're not 25 years back, that's what used to happen. What I believe eroded a lot of this was actually having international judges. I have heard pommy skippers say, if they don't call you, you haven't done anything wrong. All right? That is bull. The principle is very clear. If you believe you have done a breach, you will get clearer and do a penalty. And that penalty, under certain circumstances, may be to retire. Anyone give me an example of that?
Cause damage.
Cause of damage. Cause damage and the other boat has to retire, you've got to retire. You've got to get clear of the fleet. So we got to the situation now that many skippers believe if they're not called by an observer or the RO, or if a boat hadn't protested them, geez, I can just sail on. I had the great joy at a protest where a bloke told me, yeah, I know I hit a boat. I knew I hit him, but no one protested me. What result does that have? That's a breach of rule too. So instead of getting disqualified, he got disqualified that was not excludable from his score because he knowingly broke a rule and didn't exonerate himself. The aim of what we're doing here today is to give you a set of guidelines. They're not fixed rules, but a set of guidelines on how to conduct ranking events, which can be, as I say, brought down to club events so that the standard is maintained. Now, as we were discussing before, the big problem we have in this sport is exactly that. I know Alan, for years, fought to get us recognised as a sport because back in those days you couldn't get any grants because you weren't considered a sport. All right? So the problem is we've got people that are very competitive, that want to be conducted as a sport, and in our club we've also got people that want to be conducted as a workshop with a boating theme. They're more for the social side of it, and it is very difficult to try and please everybody. We'll just get a few admin problems out of the way to start with, all right? Changing the sailing instruction, all right? In the event that a sailing instruction is in conflict with the notice of race, etc., the sailing instruction takes precedence, all right? So if you've got the notice of race out and the sailing instruction says something slightly different, they will go to the sailing instruction to take difference. If you want to change, you can change. There's rules that you can change, and that's in the book itself. All right. What you've got to do, it's got to be done between a race. You can't do it while a race is in progress. You've got to make 2 sound signals, explain the change to the sailing instruction, and then in ranking events, you must put that on the notice board in writing. We had a case up with the DFs where we didn't want photographic evidence for the next day. Yeah. So what we did was we put in the change to the sailing instruction that photographic evidence would not be accepted. We had to have 2 whistle blasts, tell all the skippers, put it up on the notice board. Right, yeah, we've got only deal with 2 of the definition. The race committee, sometimes called the racing team, it's appointed, and it's appointed, some clubs have a events planning committee, the same sort of thing, but it's everybody involved in actually running the event. The race officer manages the on-water event on behalf of the race committee. He should be an experienced sailor with a sound knowledge of the racing rules. He doesn't have to be an expert in the rules. Why doesn't he have to be an expert in the rules? He's running the event.
Protest committee.
That's what the protest committee is for, all right? He's got to know what rules apply to him. All he has to do is, if there's a protest, is form a protest committee, and they decide whether it's a... I've had a lot of people say, oh, I'm not going to be a race officer, I don't know the rules well enough. As long as you know to follow what we do today, there's no problem. You don't make the decisions on who is right or wrong. That is up to the protest committee. Who makes up the race committee?
People involved in organising.
Yeah, so give us an example. We've got the RO.
Probably Commodore.
Observers. Scorers. Anybody involved with the actual racing. All right? So...
And the event management, because you're only dealing with racing.
Yeah. So...
Bill, but that could also... Can't that also include a competitor?
No.
Okay, so they're brought in as an observer, but that doesn't make them a member of the race.
And you find in the book that they are not an interested party if they're brought in as an observer. They're not considered an interested party if they are an official observer of the race. All right? Now, the first thing you're going to say was, in a regional event, we're not going to have all these people, and in most places you won't have all these people. But that doesn't mean that these functions have to be bloody overlooked. Some people may have to do several of these functions. All right? The race officer. The race officer quite often is a starting judge. Sometimes he's a finishing judge. I much prefer not to be the finishing judge. The reason I prefer not to be the finishing judge is because then your time is taken on that and you're not watching what else is going on the rest of the event. All right? It's much better to have an independent finishing, and we'll go in that with the finishing team. The observers. The protest and jury members are not really they're independent to the committee. Once you have handed the thing over to a protest committee, it's out of your hands. You can't get the answer come back from the protest committee and say, that's it, we're going to do this, all right? The protest committee comes up with the thing. What you may do is you may say, I wish to have the committees consider reopening that because I believe you misinterpreted this. You can say that, but you can't just blatantly overrule the protest committee. You formed it, they give you the decision, you get on with sailing. But what's the point? It's like saying, rightio, we're relating the RO to a police officer, right? He can arrest people and do things like that, but he can't send you to jail. Only the protest committee, only the courts can do that, which is our protest committee. And I strongly advise any RO not to get involved in the protest committee. I see a lot of ROs make themselves the chair of the protest committee. That's automatically bringing bias into the whole event.
Yeah, compromise yourself.
You compromised yourself. Pick your protest committee, try and pick it, and we'll go into detail with that, but try and pick it so then, like if Alan's coming first in the event by 2 points, Daniel's coming second in the event, it's not appropriate to put Alan as the chair of the protest committee. All right, because... Hey? Well, he's being protested because he has an interest in the outcome. What I always do, and that doesn't mean it's gospel, what I always do, if I've got a big event coming up, I look at the skipper's name on there and identify who I would consider to be at the beginning of the day. The protest committee, yeah, and I put it on the thing. When I form the protest committee, I then try and pick at least one experienced bloke and one also ran. And that is to give them experience.
What's the minimum number of people you have?
3. Also at the start of the protest, the chair of the protest committee should ask each of the committee, have they got an interest in this? All right. If they say, yeah, well, you know, I can knock him out here and I'll beat him, then he's out. He also, once the committee has stated whether they have an interest in it, he then asks both parties whether they are happy with the people on the committee. All right. Now, they can't be ruled out because, I don't like him, or, he heard my last protest and he disqualified me. That's not a just reason. But normally what happens is If either party is unhappy with one of the blokes on the committee, they get somebody else. What happens then, and why you should do that right at the start, he is then obligated. He can't come halfway through the committee, the protest hearing when things are going against him and say, oh, I don't want him on the committee. He's accepting him at the start. That's the end of it. But we'll go into that in more depth later. Right, let's just quickly discuss this, the exclusion of a voter or a competitor. A vote can be excluded from an event, but it must be done in writing and before he has sailed a race. Now, with our events, if you're going to do that, and you don't have very good reasons to do it, it should be done before he's travelled to the event. All right, and you've got to provide it in writing why it's done. He can appeal that, but Rule 76 will tell you. All right. The notice of race also says that somebody serving a suspension from the ARYA or a state or territory association will be excluded. People have got that tangled up. Say you're serving a suspension from Paradise Radio Yacht Club. Does that prevent you from going into a ranking event? No. The ARYA or state or territory association, that's not a club. QRYA is a state association. New South Wales is a state association. They are actually members of the ARYA. The clubs aren't members of the ARYA. All right. So just because that's an inter-club thing, if they've got a bloke suspended, that's up to the club. But that doesn't prevent him from sailing in a ranking event.
Does that mean that if a person was suspended from sailing in their club, the club would be then obligated to advise the QRYA of that status?
It's a strictly club thing. And the QRY is, normally the QRY is in a real bad situation because you're not a member of the QRYA. Only members of the QRYA are the clubs. So all the QRYA can do is go back to the club and say, what are you going to do about it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The club, if a person is suspended from the club, that club, is it their responsibility or duty to...
No, it's a club matter. Strictly a club matter. If a club is suspending them, he's not suspending them from the QRYA, he's not suspending them from the ARYA, he's suspending them from the club. And if you're running a ranking event, he is entitled to sail at that.
Bill, are you saying that the club can advise the QRYA that they want this person suspended from the QRYA?
If it's serious enough, yes, you can. All right, and it actually happened down in New South Wales, and the ARYA backed up his suspension. Not his suspension, removal from the sport. Only members of the ARYA are who?
States.
The states. The only members of the states are? Clubs. And who's the members of? They're the club. They're memberships of the club. The role of the RO. Some of his duties may include what?
Appointing a protest committee.
Appointing a protest committee.
Racecourse, start line, finish line, event timing.
Anything to do with on-water activities. They may include, not limited to, supervisor preparation and cleaning. You can delegate that out, all right, but you've got to make sure it's done. Some of the other things the race officer is, like when I did the thing up at Koana, all right, I just came in there. They had prepared everything, all right. I want to make sure, there was no double up of numbers, all right. Quite often you'll get double up of numbers. It is not a happy occasion when blokes turn up at the event and is told that he has to change his number or put a different number on, all right. You should be able to tell him before he comes to the event that's going to happen. I'd want to make sure that the fleet board tickets are done, all right, because there's no use getting to the event in a heat management system and someone say, oh, I thought you were going to do that, you know. So make sure that the fleet ticket's done. make sure that the bloke who's been nominated as a scorer is happy to provide the score sheets. Once again, big problem if you get up there and you got no score sheets. All right. Check with the scorer that he is happy to get the rankings. All right, because we'll go into that later on. Otherwise, you've got to provide that information. You've got to have that when you go up there. It's no use getting there and saying, you know, oh, well, shit, we haven't got a course board, we haven't got any tickets, so hang on, we'll have to sit down and we'll have to write all these shit out. No one's got mask and magnetic tape. So what happens in a big event, you may have 3 or 4 race officers. One of them will be nominated the principal race officer. When we won the Australian titles down at Paradise, all right, we had 4 fleets, we had 4 different race officers, and I was the principal race officer for the event. All right, so you're just coordinating the race officers. Ensure all competitors register. Now, people will tell you they don't have to provide a certificate. The fact of the matter is they've got to supply a certificate. What happens if they don't supply a certificate? Fill out a form, and there's a copy in the back of your protest thing there, and I advise that you all have several of these available. When the rules require a valid certificate to be produced or its existence verified before a race, and this cannot be done, the boat may, provided that the race committee receives a statement signed by the person in charge that a valid certificate exists, the boat shall produce a certificate or arrange for its existence to be verified with the race committee. If they don't, they are allowed to race. If they don't produce a certificate, their scores are wiped out.
How long they got to produce it?
Well, you've got to tell them. All right? There's no use telling the bloke he's got to produce a certificate 24 hours if he's come from Perth. It's pretty easy these days, because normally I don't even request the certificate. If you go to the ARYA website, you can do a search, and you can search if the certificate exists. All right? So it's pretty pointless later saying you're going to have to produce it, send me the certificate now. If you know that, yes, there is.
I think you look at your own, but I don't know if you can.
No,
I've tried to do that.
I look at everybody. You just type in the boat number. You type in the boat number, and it'll come up and tell you who it's owned, who owns it, and it will tell me who owns the boat and when it is. You just type in the boat number. With the DFs, what they normally do, if the boat doesn't measure, they usually form a committee, or whoever's doing the thing will decide whether that's performance enhancing or not, and will decide whether he's allowed to sail. The DF's got a bit of a problem with, I've got a bit of a problem with the whole thing with the DFs. In their event measurements, it lists all the things you've got to check, but then it's got no punishment, nil. You know, so why are you checking it if you're not going to bloody... Alrighty, supervisor rescue boat, issue protest forms. When you issue the protest forms, what are you got to do? On the top, you've got to put time the last boat come in, all right, and your time that you receive the thing back. You've got to put it up the top, because that's the protest committee uses that to determine whether it's a valid protest. All right. We'll go through what you should have for protest later on in the course. Calling contact with the observers. You can call contact with the observers. No use if a boat doesn't start or finish or anything. Make sure you advise the scoring committee that the boat didn't start, didn't finish, never sailed the course, etc. Calling finished, like I said, I don't like to call the finishers. I like to have part of the scoring team score the finish, and ensure behaviour policy is enforced.
Bill? DNS.
Did not start, did not finish.
Yes, that person or that competitor, should they advise you, or should they...
Yeah, well, normally the RO will advise... No, normally the RO will advise them at the top. If you don't start, if you're not going on the water, or if you come off the water, advise either the RO or the scorer as soon as possible. Because it is a problem. The scorers do the thing, especially in big fleets, they haven't got the right numbers at the end of it, so you're running around trying to find out which boats.
What's the time limit for a boat to be considered DNS?
DNS.
Did not start.
He can start any time up till the first boat finishes. Normally he can get a scoring finish if you're confident that he's going to finish within the timeout limit, and that's why they usually put it on late so that they get one less point. The RO is responsible for setting courses. He may allocate this task or seek advice from experienced skippers with local knowledge, but the final decision on the course is his. Even if you've got a course setter, the final decision on the course is his. All right. Now, most course setters are very good. They will advise you, I believe we should do this. And you say, yeah, but you have the final say on it. Just a word of advice. As I said before, if you've got a big competitive fleet and you ask the top 10 skippers what they reckon the course will be, you'll get 10 different answers. All right? You've got to decide what the course is going to be. Course setting for RO sailing often requires compromise. The location, size of the waterway, coupled with local obstructions, wind patterns, currents, all have to be considered. All right? But before we actually consider how we set a course, it would be good to determine what is a good course. What do you consider a good course? What the race management defines as a fair course is one where the competitors are spread evenly along the start line. Now, this may require you to adjust the start line as you go. Normally they say 5 degrees port biased, but if everyone's still starting up the top end, you make it a little bit more until they actually start to spread out along the course. One where the boats are evenly spread on the beat. If all the boats are going up one side, there's something wrong with the course. Not always can be fixed, but there's something you want to be looking at. All right? Where the boats are even on the run. Are they all using one? And at the gate. So what do we do if they are spread at the gate? They're all going to one gate.
Give the other one a little bit of advantage.
Yeah, just keep moving the other one till they spread.
Yeah.
Till they spread out. All right? Obviously they're going to one because they think they're going to get a lift off the bank or something else. So the line may not be perfectly square to the wind, but it is a fair course. Now this is something to strive for, and it's a means of assessing. So if everyone's starting at the top end, move the line a bit. Move the line. If everyone's starting at the bottom end, move the start mark up a bit. All right, get them to spread out along. All right. Why do we say, as a standard, we should be 5 degree port biased? Surely being square to the wind would be the ideal thing.
No, because starboard has an advantage over port boats. That's why.
Yeah, because they're blocked out. What we want to try and do is give every boat a reasonable chance of starting. All right. If it's at right angles, normally the windward boat have got you covered, especially if you're going into a bank. They've got you covered till they want to attack. All right. So what we're trying to do is just separate it a little bit. Now, has anyone heard of the ladder principle? Ladder run principle? All right. What the ladder run principle virtually says is that as long as the wind, this is directly upwind, all right, it doesn't really matter where this buoy is on that line, the distance to sail for every boat will be the same, because we're not sailing at that buoy. All right, we're sailing at 45 degrees to that buoy. So if you work it out mathematically, no matter where that buoy is, up until when?
The lay line.
Up until he can lay it. All right, if he can lay it, then there's a definite advantage. All right, that makes things a lot simpler for us. Unfortunately, we aren't 100% downwind. We already said one line's going to be 5 degrees biased, the wind's going to shift as we go up it. All right. Where this worked out well was up at the Sunshine Coast for one of the 1 metre events, they had this buoy right over near the bank. And Glenn Dawson from West Australia say, bring it across. They wouldn't bring it across because they reckon it's making it unfair for the thing. But it made no difference. But what it did do was allowed people to come in on starboard on the top mark. All right, so it's very hard to conceptualise. Obviously, if the wind swings around, this ladder goes around, the wind goes to the right, these boats have got an advantage. All right, if it goes to the left, the other boats have got an advantage.